Hey, everybody, we're going to be starting part 3 of the 4 sections of this 6-hour video. And we're going to talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. So welcome to kind of our next phase of our intro to the 6-hour portion of the video for our 30-hour course. And we're going to really take a deep dive into why we are here, why wellness has to be an intentional priority. There's a reason that we're having this class, we'll be having another class, and this is going to continue to build our cadre of people to help build more and more of us to serve others that serve. So why the heck is wellness have to be an intentional priority? Well, when we look up the statistics, I won't bore you with too many. However, back to the why. Some of these statistics are kind of geared towards police officers a little heavier than the other due to kind of where the post board statutes came for peer support. So my apologies, everything's going to be equal as we meet in person, but I just kind of want to get into some statistics for you guys to know. But a study in 2011 found that 98% of US law enforcement agencies do not require their officers to meet physical fitness standards after being hired. Now, this is pretty crazy. I remember back to 1996, I'm going to date myself, and I think I shared this earlier on that there were 2,200 people for 20 spots when I applied in 96 to get into Madison, Wisconsin PD. And I didn't think I had a chance in heck of that happening. And when I took the physical agility test, that took out 75% of our people. So that was the biggest cut. They put that much value, most departments do, on that physical fitness test. But once you pass that test, again, almost 100% of departments don't ever make you take it again, unless maybe you're going out for SWAT. If you're a firefighter, you have to take physical tests, whereas police officers typically do not. And I think that that's kind of insane that we do a job that requires us to be physically fit. We have to meet these standards to become an officer, yet we don't maintain those standards throughout our career. And part of the reason that most departments don't is several folks would potentially be a liability due to obesity, lack of fitness, all kinds of things that would put them at risk, which again, a lot of things we talk about pay now or pay later of wellness programs that are incorporating fitness into their dimensions, into their programs of allowing police, fire, dispatch, corrections officers to be able to work out on duty. This should be absolutely a primary intentional priority for agencies of first responders because, again, working 24-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, the demands that's placed on these first responders to that level of being away from home and not having the time to try to get those things in while being a parent or a spouse or a dog mom or dad or cat mom or dad, and that those things just continue to add to the plate. So kind of going in more to the statistics, trying to make it more exciting, is the Cooper Institute conducted a comprehensive assessment of 1,700 cops across the country and found them to have a lower average fitness level compared to the general population based on aerobic fitness, strength, and body fat. So if we were, again, to do the poster for police officers after retirement, it doesn't paint a really good picture. And that is extremely detrimental to our profession. We've had people just in 2024 among first responders and police that have passed a month after retirement. I won't use specific names, but there's been some individuals we've lost. A police chief to suicide a month after retirement. We've lost someone to a cardiac event a month after retirement, and that person was actually healthy. So we are losing people due to how their fitness intertwines with their overall wellness, with their body and their overall health. It's estimated that for those folks that are at those high risks, that a heart attack costs $400,000 to $750,000 for that department, no matter which type of department you're at. That's almost half to $750,000 to pay for that particular event, when we could be doing things to be proactive, which I know is against our current healthcare system, But in this profession, we have to be proactive. We have to be intentional about our wellness. And so I have the amazing gift to work with Health Quotient, which is powered by TCO, where I am surrounded by medical professionals, personal trainers, functional movement screeners, cardiologists, where I get to work collaboratively with these individuals so that my mental health piece and my fitness piece can easily collaborate with the rest of my team to help treat the whole person. We'd like to refer to all of our first responders as that tactical athlete, which actually comes from a military term, but all of our first responders have that in them. And again, it goes back to liability. In a case, Parker versus the District of Columbia, due to an officer's lack of physical fitness, the officer was unable to use less harmful defense tactics and resorted to using a firearm, causing the suspect to become a paraplegic. The verdict for this agency, the DC Metropolitan Police, found that they had deliberate indifference. When we have deliberate indifference, it is becoming a liability factor. When we go kind of further into the different subcultures, there's a study very recently in 2019 that over 50% of individuals who work in jails or prisons as correctional officers have a report of PTSD. That is off the charts in comparison to 35.3% of police officers who experience PTSD at a rate among adults in the United States. So 6.8%. And that came out of the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. So it's a very recent study that is not good news for our corrections officers who, again, are stuck potentially in pods, not walking, similar to dispatch, where they don't necessarily have the luxury of getting out and moving around. Some folks in corrections get to walk a lot, do lots of checks. Their facilities are humongous, where they can get a little bit more fitness in. But again, a lot of their duties are very sedentary. Among dispatchers, again, just the overwhelming comparison, and PTSD is really just one of the many, but obviously we're going to be spending a lot of time of it because it's one of the things we are all losing people left and right to this disorder and brain injury disease. 18 and 25% of dispatchers suffer from PTSD. We are losing 22 veterans a day to suicide. And those that suffer from PTSD at a similar rate, many of these veterans have different experiences contingent with their level of material. Their experiences are contingent on their level of military, their deployments, what conflicts they were going through. And so a lot of things that we know about veterans is not every veteran is equal. If you bring back to the video we showed of the gentleman that shared what it's like to be a veteran, is everyone's experience in the military is different. If you're in the Army National Guard, the Air Force National Guard, obviously, you may not have a deployment in your entire part of being in the military. You may never have active duty status. And so it's not apples to apples of what type of folks, but we're all serving the same goal. We're serving our country, keeping our country safe, and every position that someone has in the military, we can't put a price tag on it. And again, we'll be going further into these type of statistics and information for you to have when we're in person. Again, can't highlight enough, between 2013 and 19, the PTSD claims went from $18.6 million in costs from the public safety personnel, accounted for $18 million. Today, there are more than 393 claims that we know about today over the last couple of years, totaling over 45 million. We've tripled the amount of millions of dollars that we have paid out in PTSD disabilities. 84% of that was law enforcement, 14% fire, 2% from EMS. And corrections officers and dispatchers still not considered first responders, which is absolutely insane for our state. Colorado recognizes them. Several other states recognize these two entities as first responders, and we are not quite there yet. And so for the individuals that I've worked with in corrections and dispatch who have had to leave the field due to PTSD, do not get the same benefits that firefighters, police officers, or veterans get for their disability, for the same disability, same public service. And so we have a lot of work to do in that area to make sure we're equal in all these areas. And in Minnesota, the disability retirements for both physical and psychological injuries for police officers rose from 128 in 2009 to 12 to 240 in 2013 to 16, jumping up, actually went down a little bit, 224 in the years of 17 to 2019, but the striking increase was in the psychological injuries, which rose from 27 retirements to 70 retirements to 113 retirements just before George Floyd. So when we talk about the why, we will go into further a working definition of what a critical incident is, but a critical incident is the very definition of a traumatic event, an event that overwhelmed all of our five senses and was very difficult for us emotionally, physically, psychologically, for us to process that event, and that it's not going to resolve easily on its own. And so when we think about these things, what has to reach the height for it to be a critical incident is all your five senses have to be overwhelmed, and you're having a really difficult time processing that on your own. And so when I teach this class or any other class around trauma, around addiction, around healing, I often ask the question when I'm talking to a group of first responders, just to give them perspective, that a general civilian, someone who's not a first responder, typically goes through 3 to 4 critical incidents in their life. That could be an unexpected death. It could be a major crisis for them, but only 3 to 4 typically in your average Joe or Sally. When we talk about firefighters, military, EMS, corrections, and police officers, that number goes up to 190, 200 for their entire career. So a career of 20 years, 30 years, we're talking 190 of those traumatic events for that brain to process. So what's the why? If that doesn't tell us why, our brain cannot process that much trauma over a course of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It can't. Your hippocampus, which you're going to learn all about in class, is where your memory networks are, and it helps your brain teach you when danger's coming. It helps you remember how to calm yourself, how to take care of yourself. That's where all your memory network is in your hippocampus. And so when we have 190 critical incidents going in there, eventually the brain is having a bunch of neural pathways that are getting hijacked, and the brain gets very confused and doesn't have a timestamp of when things started and when they stopped. That's when PTSD kicks in with flashbacks, where any of those five senses are activated and the person feels as if they're re-experiencing it because their memory was not able to process that event because their five senses were overwhelmed. They couldn't process that normally in their REM sleep, which is where we process all of our memories. And then the brain is a little stuck and it's confused. So we're going to learn a ton about this. I don't want to bore you with it right now, but again, it's back to why are we here? Why is this wellness an intentional priority? The long-term stress of the job caused by related exposure to high-risk incidents for police officers, firefighters, veterans, corrections, increase in every area of anxiety, depression, PTSD, insomnia at a disproportionate rate in the general public. It goes without saying. We could throw up any statistic on here and we would be able to articulate that very well. Over 30% of our first responders, specifically in fire, law enforcement, and corrections, continues to rise. Veterans obviously continue to rise, and even dispatch has increased significantly since 2020, since the events of George Floyd and the pandemic. The pandemic caused us all to go inward. We couldn't go anywhere. We were in isolation. And so what do we do when we're bored and we can't go anywhere and we don't know what to do? A lot of folks would have cocktail hour via Zoom. Sounds like a great idea, socially interacting, but if you have nowhere else to go but your refrigerator and back to your computer, that limits things. And people were using chemicals quite often because we didn't have other things to be able to engage socially in. So if you had a pre-existing determination factor for potentially addiction, then that is where we are seeing an increase in addictive folks struggling with addiction today since 2020. It doesn't mean that the pandemic caused them to be an alcoholic, but if you have risk factors that go into potentially having connections genetically to addiction, that can show up if you continue to increase tolerance, which then increases withdrawal and then increases brain chemistry, where then your brain is addicted, it's dependent, And when we're dependent, then that's a whole different situation. And so I have to battle with people a lot, because what do we do in our fields, right? What has been socially acceptable for all this time, but is to get together, put a couple cold ones together, get together, cry, laugh, share all this ick at a bar, at a party, at a club. And that's just been our social norm. Pick your subculture. That's always been socially acceptable. And even though in the military, you get punished significantly if you get caught drinking, DWIs, you're out. It's still a culture that people drink a lot in the military, which is kind of baffling to me, because what it can cost somebody in the military is their whole career. Yet it's something that is going on all over the place. And so, we don't have a lot of systems that have been set up for us to be successful in these fields, because it's the same old playbook of it's just part of the job. It's just part of the job, right? We lose more officers, firefighters to suicide than line of duty deaths. Cannot deny this fact. Corrections officers also die of suicide at twice the rate of police and the general public. So again, none of us are immune to all of this. What happened in Burnsville has affected us as a state, as a country, losing some of our own. And if anyone is in this class that was touched by that event personally, it is still gut-wrenching for me. Even watching the video earlier in the previous segment is just, it brings it back for me, because I remember exactly where I was when I got the call. I remember driving to the police station that day of the event to be there for psychological first aid. And it's like reliving it again and again. So none of us can leave this unscathed. And so again, it just stresses again, why this is so important.
The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, created the Wellness Initiative to help people with mental and/or substance use disorders, and all people, live longer, healthier lives by focusing on the 8 dimensions of wellness that connect all aspects of behavioral health. Improving wellness by taking action on each of these dimensions addresses early mortality from treatable and preventable conditions. Embracing wellness is about life and living, and becoming the healthiest you possible. Listen to your feelings, express them to people you trust, and maintain a positive outlook. Make it a point to understand your finances, establish good financial habits, and plan for the future. A sense of belonging and a reliable support system help during difficult times. Make at least one social connection daily. Seek advice from peers or support groups, and create healthy friendships. Enhancing your connection to self, nature, and others brings balance and peace to your life. Take time to discover what values and beliefs are most important to you. Look for satisfaction from things you're passionate about, whether it is through work, school, or volunteering. Reduce your risk of many illnesses by increasing activity levels according to your abilities, getting restful sleep at night, choosing healthy foods, and exploring outdoors to reduce stress and increase energy levels. Be a lifelong learner by expanding your knowledge and finding creative outlets that stimulate your mind and sense of curiosity. Be open to new ideas, insights, and wisdom. A positive environment has a calming effect. Find surroundings that encourage good physical and mental health, and where you also feel safe. At SAMHSA, we envision a future in which people with mental and/or substance use disorders, and all people, pursue optimal health, happiness, recovery, and a full and satisfying life in the community. Wellness is an ongoing pursuit and can be challenging at times, but striving to make small daily improvements is the key to success. For more information and resources about wellness, visit www.samhsa.gov/wellness-initiative.
So thanks for watching that quick little video. We're going to take a deeper dive, and this is just kind of a nice dimension wheel that I like to use. It's colorful, it's rainbow colors. But when we kind of go over the 8 dimensions of wellness, we're going to take a deep dive into every single one. And just to go over them briefly, the 8 of them are our emotional wellness, right? Coping effectively with life, creating satisfying relationships. Our financial, being satisfied with our current and future financial situation. Our social wellness, developing a sense of connection and belonging as a well-developed support system. So incredibly, like, we couldn't be any closer to the social wellness in terms of peer support. Spiritual wellness, expanding the sense of purpose and meaning of life. And when we say spiritual, we're not referring to simply, we're not speaking in terms of religion. We're talking about spiritual, connecting to something that's bigger than yourself, connecting to your meaning and purpose behind your life and what you do and why you do it. Going into occupational wellness, which is our personal satisfaction in what we do, right? I would imagine most people in this class might not be very satisfied with what they're doing because we're all first responders and it's very challenging. Yet I try to choose the positive of what my career has given me and what I've been able to do with my career since then. I'm no longer wearing a duty belt. I'm no longer wearing the uniform, but I have been walking side by side with first responders for the second half of what I call my Rachel 2.0 of walking the walk with you. I get to be an advocate for you. I get to help you along the way. I get to use my experiences and my similarities with many of you to hopefully help and divide some of that struggle. And then also to provide the guidance and support and knowledge that I can provide to help you live better, live more quality, and to be happier, healthier individuals. We have the physical. When we think of wellness, I think that's just what we all think of. We all think of fitness, right? And wellness is by far more important. There's so much more to it than just physically fit. I think when I started this, fitness is what I considered well, and it's always been at the very core of who I am and how I operate. We have intellectual wellness, which might seem a little odd. We're not measuring anyone's EQ or IQ or anything like that, but it's recognizing our creative abilities and finding ways to expand how we learn, right? I hit over 50 this year, and if I find myself forgetting things, so how do we keep our brain moving? How do we keep it going? Unfortunately for me, I get too involved in too many things. So I'm pushing my brain to the limit quite a bit. So then I have to take back. And then for me, fitness is how I get my brain to calm down and slow down sometimes. So again, using all the 8 dimensions, we can't just do one, we have to do all of them. And then environmental, that might sound kind of weird, but our good health, occupying a pleasant, stimulating environment that we live in, supporting our well-being. There's little things that we can do to help our environment. And, every place in a first responder, we all recycle, we get to be part of that, but there's so many more things we can get in terms of environmental. So just kind of taking a deeper dive into each of these dimensions. Emotional wellness, again, it's not just about when we're happy, sad, or glad, but emotional wellness is our ability to express and experience and manage our feelings appropriately, right? Every single one of us is in a field, any subculture, being exposed to different kinds of significant events. And so how we express and manage our feelings that are related to those events is very individualized. Many of us don't feel comfortable sharing that. And it involves the ability to effectively cope and change our emotional states and situations that present us with several obstacles, right? It's kind of the very definition: corrections, dispatch, police, fire, ERs, paramedics. Our entire existence is being prepared for the unknown, right? And so we have to learn very concretely how to manage our emotions in the eyes of danger or in the eyes of the unknown, because that's in itself, every single one of first responders is that uncertainty and unpredictability of our subcultures. And so being able to manage our emotions, having that emotional regulation in the eyes of danger is so very critical to us. And so I use the example when I talk to citizens it's a horrible example, but it kind of brings true of, it's the example of, you see someone pull over on the side of the road and someone has absolutely lost their mind, and the cop is in complete calm temperament, and the EMS, paramedics, and fire are very calm, while the other person is absolutely ballistic. And what actually has happened is there is someone that was lost a part of their body on a convertible in a semi truck. And so we as first responders, have to bring the calm, to someone who literally lost their person, significant other, etc. And that is a huge skill that we have to do. And it's called compartmentalizing. It's called dissociation. We have to take ourselves somewhere else for a little bit so we can keep ourselves calm to be able to act and manage what we have to do in that moment. Not everyone's built for this. Not everyone is built to be a first responder, and that's okay. If I work with people all the time and I'm not in the business of telling someone you have to stay in your field, the golden handcuffs that many of us have of being connected to para or an amazing retirement, beautiful things. But they still can't be the most important thing if our mental, physical, emotional, financial wellness is in jeopardy. So some measures that you can implement to improve your wellness include self-esteem, taking control after an experience or a potential defeat, avoiding dwelling on negative thoughts or situations, discovering meaning after a loss. And a loss could be ambiguous loss. It could be the loss of a relationship, of a job, of a position. It could be a death. Allowing yourself to recover after a rejection and getting enough rest and exercise. Seems too easy, right? But we don't often give ourselves just enough to pause, to be able to just take a breath, get in touch with what we're feeling, right? Because we're so used to going to the next call, going to the next situation, that oftentimes we lose any connection to our body and ourselves because we don't want to be in touch with those feelings. And so if we don't find ways to regulate that, and then also give us time when we're alone or with our family or our loved ones where we're safe to let emotions fly, we don't want to get stuck. We don't want to have that box overflow, the filing cabinet busting out at the seams. And so one of the most critical factors in this dimension is having that self-awareness and insight into what those emotions are, where they come from, and how to manage them. I can't tell you how many clients come to me and they're like, I don't feel anything. I'm numb. I was at this debrief, Rach, and everyone else was crying and I felt fine. Am I effed up? And I will ask them, are you avoiding? Are you numbing? Are you trying to push those feelings down? And if the answer to all those questions is no, you might just have a resilience factor that you are just unaffected. And that doesn't make it wrong. It just means that you are more equipped to deal with a particular situation. And as long as you're not avoiding, stuffing, maladaptive coping in a negative way, maybe you're just okay, and that's okay. Again, we're okay if we're not okay, and we're sure as heck okay if we're okay. So here's just one story of an individual sharing their experience with one of the dimensions of wellness.
Who do you think you are? Was the question my therapist posed to my 22-year-old self. Immediately, I activated my inner city Philly girl face and almost said, "Who are you talking to?" But before I could utter the word, she interrupted and said, "Pause for a moment. Think about it and take your time and answer the question. Yeah, who do you think you are?" I felt a burning sensation all through my body. My hands began to shake. I could feel the swelling in my throat, and I couldn't hold back the tears. I don't know. I don't know. Because honestly, I indeed did not know. The world had told me lies of who I was and who I was to be. They decided that I would be a statistic, a product of my environment, the angry Black female with unresolved trauma. The tears continued to fall. My therapist gave me a tissue in one hand and a blank journal in the other, with these instructions. Over the next 7 days, I want for you to first write how you felt in this moment, in this session. Every emotion that has come up, I want for you to write it down. Secondly, I want for you to take a few days, pause, dig deep, and answer the question, who do you think you are? I left that session angry that I allowed someone to see me cry that I did not know. Confused and determined. I was determined to never allow myself to not be able to answer a question about me. I was determined that I would no longer identify with what the world said I should be. I was determined to unlearn, to unleash, and to become who I was destined to be. That day started my journey of self-reflection and emotional wellness. 20 years ago, I can stand here today saying that I love me, that I know who I am, and I know who I think I am. I think I'm smart. I think I'm brilliant. I'm a tad bit sassy, somewhat bossy, but I own my space. That session, that experience changed the trajectory of my life and introduced me to my life's work of cultivating people across the world to become the best version of themselves. Not for any other reason, but because they deserve to be. Equity says that we all should be treated fairly. For some of us, we come out the womb not being treated fairly. And because of what society says, we believe it. So I am on a journey to help people rediscover who they truly are, not what others have deemed they should be. Self-reflection has been the catalyst for my success, and I am able to look at others with a different lens, not from a bias, not from what others say, but from my heart, because I did the work to see people in a new way. Self-reflection is about introspect. It's about us taking an opportunity to look at our values, our beliefs, our emotions, our thoughts, and what motivates us. Reflection allows us to see ourselves in a greater way and have greater awareness. I wish I could say that self-reflection was easy or that that journey that I embarked on was easy. It wasn't. And today, with so much fast-paced things going on in the world and every minute of our calendar being full and we're moving from place to place and event to event and experience to experience, it is hard to pause. But you have to be intentional with taking time to reflect. These past 18 months have been hard for all of us, individually, collectively, as a society, and as a world. We've experienced uncertainty, civil unrest, grief, loss, anxiety, depression. And as we are excited and eager to move to our next normal, I implore you to pause and think about who you've become after these 18 months. Have you asked yourself the question, who am I after I've experienced this? How well am I? Do I have the emotional capacity and strength to move forward? Because emotional wellness is about acknowledging and being aware of our emotions and managing the relationship we have with them, not allowing the emotion to dictate what you do. Emotions last between 60 and 90 seconds. After that, it becomes a thought, then a behavior. It's our physical response in our body to what's going on in the outside world. Emotions are data, but not directives. Are you listening to your emotions and doing what they say, or are you managing them? That's what emotional wellness is. And as we continue to move forward and go back to work in our everyday lives, have you taken time to rediscover you? Every part of you, what's changed, what's new, how you came out different, and who you decide to show up as. In order for you to serve anyone, to see others, you have to see your own biases that you bring to the table. Emotions are like biases. They're not good or bad. They just come to let you know what's going on in the inside. And as you go out and show up in your world, in your space, making it better, making it greater, don't forget to take a moment to rediscover you. Thank you.
So obviously, her story is very powerful for me. I love her term of self-reflection and diving deep, and how it takes a lot of courage for us to put the mirror in front of our face and to find out who you think you are. And I just really love her story, and it kind of ties a lot of the elements of wellness that we're going to talk about in terms of emotional, intellectual, physical, spiritual, and the effort that it takes in that self-reflection period. Because when we're talking about wellness in terms of the 8 dimensions, when we're talking about introspection, and that can be very difficult. And one of the things with being a first responder is we tend to have a lot of masks that we wear. And I know for me, I had a sergeant mask, I had a SWAT mask, I had a spouse mask, I had a child mask, I had lots of different hats that I wore, lots of different lenses, right? And it would kind of change based on who was coming to me, what I was doing, and what my role and responsibilities were at that time. And so I work with a lot of people where they get so deep into that occupational part of wellness that becomes all of their, what they perceive as wellness. And too often we allow our jobs to be our self-identity. That's our identity. And we lose sight of all of our identities, right? So like I like to use a circle and then put a bunch of circles in there that represent all the different parts of ourselves. And my job as a cop, I will always have that part of my identity. The part I had as a correctional officer, I will always have that as part of my identity. The part of being a recovering woman in recovery, always will have that as identity. Wife, daughter, sister, aunt, cousin, friend, supervisor, business owner, writer, trainer, consultant. Like we have all these identities. And so when people come to me and they're very lost, and they literally will come and say, I'm stuck, I have no idea what to do, I will have them do that self-reflection. And sometimes it's really hard to put the mirror and be like, I'm missing these pieces because this is the only mask that I feel comfortable in. I don't want you to truly see or be, I don't want to truly be seen. And if we're in that place, we're not in a place of being vulnerable or self-reflective because we are just purely stuck. And so I really appreciated her talk and her share of her own experience and journey. And we will just kind of go into the next critical phase of wellness, which is, again, like I said, it's typically the first thing that we think of when we talk about wellness is people automatically think it's about fitness. If you ask people about healthcare, many people will think of fitness or their doctor. And so there's just those two dimensions, and all the rest of them sometimes get forgotten. But physical wellness has got to be, it is my primary. And again, if we don't put enough into one thing, the rest of our dimensions may suffer. And for me, I put way too much into my fitness and not enough into my spiritual, emotional, intellectual wellness, because that was my identity. I was an elite swimmer, Olympic swimmer. I was an elite triathlete, marathon runner, half Ironman triathlete. So my identity was very much endurance athlete is who Rachel Peterson is. And so the problem with that is diving so far in at such a young age. I was body fat tested every other week as a 12-year-old. And that was not really healthy looking back, being in a swimsuit my whole life, for my own self-awareness of how I felt I looked. Because the messages I always got is I was never as thin as my teammate or my other teammate who had body fats of 4, 5, 6. And so that became a struggle for me in my teens and in college. And that took years of processing that, and fitness just fueled it, because I could always say, this is a positive thing. And it is. We just have to make sure we do it. So as I continue to kind of beat a dead horse with how critical fitness is, and again, going back to how much emphasis is often put in physical fitness to get hired in many of these positions, it's not often viewed as a necessity moving forward, when it's one of the most critical things we have to our wellness. And despite many of us doing too much or too little, again, it goes back into moderation of how we fit all those things into the 8 dimensions. So when we think of our fitness, it's that physical wellness that encompasses making a conscious effort to keep your body in the best condition possible. Obviously, regulating, exercising, walking, eating a good diet, drinking plenty of water, avoiding smoking, monitoring your drinking. Obviously, best way to never become an alcoholic is never to drink, but I know that that's completely unrealistic. And had I followed that path, which I did until my 30s, I would have been fine. And just achieving and maintaining just the goals of maintaining and reducing your risk of heart disease, keeping your weight at a good level, decreasing risk for joint problems, physical injuries. Every single job that we have in subculture of first responders, it's such a toll on our body. And so being able to keep ourselves in good shape to reduce injury, reduce the risk of injury. And if we are injured, if we're already physical fit, we tend to heal a lot faster, because we're very connected to our body in terms of how we can either adapt to the injury or help build muscle groups around where the injured location is in our body. And so it's just very critical to our nutrition, and what we put into our body is a great representation of how we're doing. And I can't stress enough, if someone comes to my office for any kind of disorder related to anxiety, depression, trauma, etc., OCD, fitness is always going to be one I'm going to recommend, because when we get the sweat and the ick out of our body, we process a lot of trauma out of our body. We're getting that negative stress hormone of cortisol outside of our body. And so if you're angry, mad, sad, glad, get your butt on a bike for a walk in nature, something that you can see do that is moving your body. Body in motion stays in motion. And so grabbing on the couch, sitting in front of Netflix, throwing on video games, while that can be another way of decompressing and relaxing, is it helping you develop your 8 dimensions of wellness? Something to think about. So the next thing we're going to go into is intellectual wellness. And intellectual wellness is a purposeful participation in activities that encourages stimulating and creative mental activities. And just the path to this type of wellness involves exploring issues related to creativity, how you learn, how you problem solve, and keeping our brain going, keeping things moving forward. And so promoting intellectual wellness can be achieved in a variety of ways, right? Reading is one of the oldest, best proven facts for us to achieve intellectual wellness, right? Knowledge is power. And if you're not challenging your brain, which I know every single one of us is anyway because of our job, but challenging how we learn things, how we keep learning things, right? Because sometimes our jobs can be monotonous, even in the insanity of the unpredictability, right? Writing reports, call lists, checklists, counts, progress reports, DORs, you name the type of report. Some of it can be very monotonous and repetitive. And so what are we doing to challenge up here to challenge our brain? Another thing is writing down your thoughts at the end of the day, or a story from the past that not only helps your brain, but is also keeping it active. And it's also a good way for you to express your feelings. So like journaling, if I had a good day, bad day, how can I represent this somewhere in a journal or just some way that I reflect, right? So it's another way to stimulate that intellectual part of the brain. Simple conversation is considered a brain exercise. So talking to each other, so many of us are finding that isolation and not leaving the house just feels better. I fall into that as well. I'm generally an extrovert, as most of you will find when you meet me in person, but I'm following myself, wanting to be home more often, and as much as I love all of you and want to listen to your struggles every day, sometimes I want to come home and I want someone to hear me. And so, sometimes I like to be home alone too. Playing brain games, whether you buy a crossword puzzle, play chess with a friend, we'll throw up gaming, why not? Your phone, tablet, obviously your phone is not always the greatest thing, but we can use it in a positive way, right? Games that stimulate our mind, Tetris, word puzzles, all those kinds of things. They challenge our mind. And then according to the medical news today, the top 5 brain games is Lumosity, Elevate, Peak, Fit Brains, and then Cognifit. So again, these are just many ways that we can engage that intellectual wellness and keep our brain moving. And then we're going to go into what we're all doing, which is our identity as a first responder, our occupational wellness. And so most people spend at least a third of their adult life at work, and even more for first responders due to shortages, overtime, having mandates. With that in mind, it's understandable that having a healthy work-life balance is so critical to your wellness, and having this balance in developing habits and environment of occupational is key. And so if you have an agency that is valuing you as much as you should be valued, who has a gym and has ways for you to work out at work, what an amazing way to use your fitness wellness into your occupation. What better gift in the planet would be to get paid to work out? So there's no excuses. There's no excuses for that, right? And so not everybody can do that. And because we are all suffering while we're all still here, if we don't take advantage of these things that are being developed for us outside the box, right? Then we have no one to blame but ourselves, right? And so steps to kind of occupational occupational wellness can be accomplished by setting goals, seeking out mentors. For me, like as a clinician, part of my ethical duty is to be up to date on the most best practices, my ethics, my laws, my statutes. I have to do that, right? So that takes energy. It takes time to find those things, make sure you're apprised, but also to have mentors and other people that you can bounce ideas about. So I would never share anything about any of my clients, but oftentimes we have similarities and patterns that may be arising, and we may be, as a clinician, I would love to say I have an answer for everything, every modality I have training in. But some of my peers can teach me new skills, they can give me new ideas, or just a new pathway to start with a client. And so that really helps with my occupation, my intellectual, my emotional, and my social. And so just learning to balance our life that way, bringing us happiness and joy, something we're just really lacking. Setting short-term goals, right? SMART goals, short, measurable, attainable, all those things, giving us purpose to our work and feeling like we have an accomplishment. I love meeting cops that have remained street patrol their whole career, because I could not do that. And I think that's so amazing, because we need people who love that work. And I have too many people today since 2020 that have gotten off the road, and they're literally doing anything and everything to not go back to the road because of fear of going to prison, fear of going to jail, fear of having to use force. When use of force laws change day to day, week to week, in law enforcement anyway. And so it's just very stressful. A lot of people considering leaving the field because they don't want to go back to the road. And so those folks that work that road their whole career, my hat is off to all of them. So again, defining goals, mentors can provide us valuable career advice, guidance. So finding people that you look up to. In the land of recovery, I'm always told stick with the winners, right? The energy suckers, they got to go. And I have some in my life, but I keep them at bay. I use a lot of boundary skills around that. And I try to surround my people that lift me up, build me up, not take me down, right? And so finding that life balance with all of that is just very critical. Social wellness. Again, this can flow into all the other dimensions. They go hand in hand. The ability to connect with others. We are put on this planet to connect. And my hope is that we have strong relationships that we can maintain to help our social wellness, right? When you have a great thing that happened to you today, who do you want to call? I challenge any of you. Who are you going to call? Are they close to you? Is it, who's going to share that joy with you? Because you share joy and then it multiplies. And we don't have enough of that going on right now. So if you have an accomplishment or something you're proud of, or your kid did something amazing, call and tell somebody, share it with somebody, because I can guarantee they're going to have something they would love to share with you. And then we can actually multiply some joy around here. And so this social aspect that so many of us have struggled with since 2020 and our first pandemic and most of our lifetimes is where we fell back into isolation. And as a community, in first responder community or just the community in general, we don't heal in isolation, we heal in community. And so it's so critical to keep those relationships strong. And I have a lot of folks that, picking up that 800-pound phone to like call somebody up. I mean, that's a struggle. And but it's so critical to your wellness to have those social interactions and things where people challenge you, those friendships, those mentorships, people that you mentor. And so both physical and mental health is bringing that positivity. It's impacted by accomplishing those social wellness. So, let's say you have a workout routine, improve your physical health, you have a friend do it with you, hold you accountable, you're more likelihood for both of you to achieve your goals, right? And further, if you're experiencing something really, really struggle and having a difficulty with, again, a relationship with someone close to you, someone you let in, can help you with that. You can find people that you can depend on, and they can depend on you. And we need people to encourage us, right? We face a battle every day. And I'm not a huge social media person, but one time I saw this and it said, we're all fighting something that you know nothing about. And I always try to remind myself, and I remind others, that if someone is a little irritable or short with you that day, try your best not to take it personal, and just kind of have an extra thought of like, maybe something's going on with them and it has absolutely nothing have to do with me. And so just giving people grace when they're not showing up real well, and maybe instead of reacting with anger, being like, hey, the other day, I'm just wondering if you're okay. It just seemed like you were really not happy and just real frustrated. Anything I can do? So just ways of us working on that mental well-being to tie it all into all these dimensions. All right, so our next video is a social wellness quiz, and I really love this gal's style.
Do you realize that loneliness and social isolation can be as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? Think about that. And it recently just leapfrogged obesity as the #2 killer in the United States. And yet most of us, we watch what we put into our bodies, what we eat, or if we exercise, a lot more than we pay attention to the people that we let into our lives. Why? It's because most of us are under a delusion that I'm going to rid us of today. Here it is. We think that what we put into our bodies, what we eat, or if we smoke, affects our biochemistry more than the things we experience externally. And that's not true. The people, the things, and the contexts around us influence our physiology just as much as the things that we consume. I studied this subject as a biosocial anthropologist. That means I get to study how humans have evolved and how they've adapted over time to all of their different environments. And that includes our modern, man-made environment. And there's one thing that all humans across time and throughout every culture, they've all shared. It's this one thing. It's that humans are hypersocial. From our infant dependency to our extended juvenility to our massive social groups, humans literally require one another for our basic survival. So much so that the human infant has over 100 different adaptations to get you to listen, respond, love, and take care of them. It is not by accident that babies smell so good. In fact, studies show that when a parent smells the top of its infant's head, the reward centers of the brain light up just the same as on opioids. But it's also not by accident that when a baby cries, the human feels awful. In fact, studies show it floods the system with stress hormones, and those stress hormones don't go away until the crying baby has been quelled. So quite frankly, the human parent is hijacked. That relationship alters their biochemistry. And when we alter our biochemistry, that changes how we feel and how we behave. And that ability, that susceptibility to one another, our body's ability to adapt and respond to our environments, especially social ones, that doesn't go away as we age. So much so that most or much of the experiences you face every day are your body's way of responding and reacting to your social environment via a series of hormonal rewards and punishments. When we do something pro-social, when we find significance, when we feel like we matter or belong, when we fit in, or when we achieve social capital, we get rewarded with yummy, pleasurable hormones, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. We don't talk enough about this. Your body gives you natural painkillers when you do social things. But the opposite, much like the baby crying, is true as well. When we don't achieve that significance and that belonging and that status, when we feel alone and disconnected, the opposite happens as well. All that unpleasantness, that social pain. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing to realize is it doesn't even matter if these social interactions are real, digital, or even imagined. Much the same way that a movie will change the way our bodies, our emotions, or even our sensations feel, a social interaction does the same thing. So we need to start paying attention to each and every one. So how do we check in? How do we know if we're socially healthy? How do we know if we're in danger or if there's a threat? I did some research to figure out where's our body mass index for social health. Where is a place where we can go to figure out if we need more friends or maybe less? Turns out there isn't one. So I invented it. Introducing to the stage the Social Health Index. We're going to start today by asking a very simple question. How many close friends do you have? Now don't guess. I want you to really count. Who would bail you out of jail, let you crash on their couch, or pick you up from an embarrassing surgery? How many friends do you have? Now the next question is, how many of those friends know your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your failures, and they love you because of it all. How many people do you have like that? That's your quality score. Now I want you to put your fingers together, your 2 points, your quantity score and your quality score, and find the point where your fingers meet. That's what we're calling your perceived social health score. This is how you feel about the number and depth of the relationships in your life. Now, if you're in the green zone, great job. That means you have a very healthy social safety net. That means if you hit rock bottom fast, you would have enough people to protect you and care for you, to have your back. If you're in the yellow zone, you're riding what I'm calling a social seesaw. That means sometimes it's amazing. Other times it sucks. Okay? And that puts your social health at risk. That means either you have a lot of acquaintance-like friendships, but they're not deep enough, and followers do not count. Or you have a couple of really close friends, but not enough. And that puts your social health at risk, especially if you experience a social threat, a death, a breakup, or even a hit to your reputation. You need that safety net in place. Now, if you're in the red zone, I want you to listen closely. Loneliness and social isolation are matters of life and death. Improving and investing in relationships does not get easier the longer we wait. And it's up to you to start investing and improving those relationships now. Because much like your favorite comfort foods, not all relationships are good for your health. So, now that we know how to check in with our social health, how do we get into the green zone? I'm going to leave you with 3 quick tips to get into the green zone. The first one is very simple. Every human needs at least one emotional support human. This is the person that will tell you that you are the sun when you feel like your world is falling apart. Who is your person? Who is your emotional support human? Find one. Be theirs. 2, this one is very easy and it works every single time, but I cannot take credit for it. Next time you're with someone, no matter who they are, pay attention to how you feel. Pay attention to the signals that your mind, your body, and your emotions are sending to you. Do they spark joy? Do you want to spend more time with them? Do you feel natural and comfortable? Do you feel safe, both emotionally and physically? Or do you feel heavy, tired, constantly on guard? If so, get rid of them. I'm just kidding. You cannot throw out relationships the way you can an old t-shirt, but Marie Kondo's method of decluttering still works for us to help us determine the joy in the relationships in our lives via an internal joy meter. Because ultimately, when it comes to your relationships, only you can decide how you feel. So the next time you're with someone, pay attention. If they spark joy, keep them close. Text them often. Find ways to meet up. Be there for them in their joys and mourn with them in their losses. This is an important part of your social safety network. Now, if you're with someone and they diminish the joy in your life, take a really hard look at why, when, how often, and even if you need to spend time with them. Limit the power they have over your emotions and your decisions. Be respectful, but set boundaries on your participation, your time, and your engagement. If need be, put them at the periphery of your social safety network. Finally, this third one, simple too. You become who you are around. Our beliefs and our behaviors are contagious. Studies show from divorce, politics, obesity, to happiness, self-control. All of these things are affected by the people we are around. So I want you to ask yourself this question. Are the people I'm around the most the people whom I'd like to become? I want you to listen to your doctor because they are an expert in the human body. And to get healthy, they will tell you to eat healthy and exercise. And I agree, I want you to listen to them. But I also want you to listen to this doctor. I'm an expert in the human species, and I am telling you that you need healthy social interactions daily to be healthy. So your prescription, if you choose to accept it, is to check in with your social health regularly. Make sure you're in the green zone or make steps to get there. Invest in the number and depth of your relationships and try to spend the bulk of your time around people who make you happy. Because ultimately, it won't only determine how happy you are, it will determine how healthy you are. Thank you.
I absolutely loved her sense of humor and way of putting words to how critical our social dimension of wellness is. I talk about oxytocin a lot when I train, which is that cuddle hormone of feeling connected to somebody. And it is so utterly important for us to be connected to other people, because when we're not connected to people, and we're disconnected, then again, that pain shared and pain divided, it just keeps us stuck and everybody loses. But when we connect, divide, and share, that connection couldn't be more important to our resilience. And it's one of the most important protective factors is our connection to support in our world. So while all of these are the 8 dimensions of wellness, the social one is I can't argue it's more important than the others, but in terms of our resilience of handling this field, our social connection is so critical to us remaining resilient and having a pack behind us and having that ability to be with people who can challenge our worldview and make us feel safe when we're home, away from the chaos of our day-to-day jobs and lives in these fields. And so I just really love her message, and just to kind of go hand in hand with what she was talking about, other ways to improve the social wellness, join an interest group, church, community. If you're not into church, art, theater, parenting group, kids, kickball, whatever. Volunteering is one of the greatest ways we can improve our social wellness. The act of giving without having to receive anything other than being helpful. Avoid one-sided toxic relationships, just like she talked about, right? If I don't want to be with the energy suckers, I want to be with the people that represent goodness and kindness and lift me up. And so interacting with those people in our lives that hold us accountable and push us and support us. Distancing yourself from folks that are the energy suckers, right? We've got friends maybe from high school that we liked, and they just keep hanging around and they call you when they only need something from you. And it's like, I have kind of a rule they teach us in therapy that if you're working harder than your clients, you're working too hard, which means I can't enable my clients. And so while I've been a fixer in corrections and law enforcement, I can't necessarily be a fixer as a clinician. My job is to get you to get insight. And so if I'm working harder than you, I'm working too hard. And so I've adapted that kind of in my life sometimes, that if I have friends that they only call me when they need me, they don't call like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. I don't put as much energy into those relationships because I work harder in them than they do. And I'm willing to do that for people I care deeply about. But if that's always the terms of the relationship, then I'm going to cut back from it. Challenging a desire to isolate, which many of us are struggling with right now. Again, stick with the winners. I can't stress that enough. And peer support can improve this area in so many ways, but we have to also manage the boundaries around that. Peer support is not necessarily meant to just be a social thing, but it can improve others with that as having another person to talk to. So the next one is how to achieve spiritual wellness. And sorry, Edgar, can you go back? I we will start here again. So the next category of wellness is spiritual wellness. And sometimes that feels like an awkward thing to talk about. But spiritual wellness is extremely important to our journey. And it's a personal one. That's the uniqueness of spirituality. We're not talking about religion. We're not talking about doctrine, something that's organized, but spirituality refers to that fundamental dimension of human life, the person's connection to what they believe is a source of divinity, one's most inner feelings. Spiritual wellness provides with a strong sense of self-awareness and potentially faith, right? And so it reflects a positive attitude towards life and faith. And those to achieve it often say it helps them to feel it is possible to change things that once seemed impossible in their lives, decide ups and downs. And again, when I talk about this, you'll hear it again, restless, irritable, discontent. When we are those three things, which most first responders are, we are not spiritual. We tend to be spiritually bankrupt. And you will hear that again and again. So how do we fill the bucket of spiritual energy? How do we take care of ourselves? What is our why? And this is one of the most key factors to resilience as a first responder doing it long term, is how do I refuel my spiritual bucket after I have some very unspiritual things that I have to go through every single day, right? How do I incorporate this? And so how do we achieve this? Well, some guidelines include just finding a quiet place to refresh and recharge, advocate for the rights of others, developing love, faith, a positive attitude, acting with love, respect, gratitude, and forgiveness towards people. Oftentimes people misunderstand what forgiveness is. Most people kind of see forgiveness as I forgive this bad behavior, therefore we're fine. But really forgiveness is not about the person who did the wrong thing. The forgiveness is really about the person that was hurt, because you're the one that's hurting the most. You have the lasso wrapped around your neck, holding you hostage by the pain of this particular thing that happened to you. And so forgiveness is really about releasing the rope around you that's holding you hostage in this place of pain, that you don't want to give any more power to the person that hurt you. And so it's really about releasing that for you to be able to move forward. And so when we can do that, when we can release that anger and actually forgive in that manner, we learn that our spiritual health grows. It allows us to experience a better sense of peace. And again, back to the everyday balance of life. And so this is one of the most significant buckets of energy that first responders are often missing, right? Who wants to talk about connected to and gratitude, right? When they leave my office, they might hate me because one of the most important things you're going to hear from me is working out, gratitude list, and who's in your corner, who's in your support network, right? And we have to fill this spiritual bucket. And so spiritual energy is connecting to that sense of purpose and meaning. Dealing with challenges dealing with the challenges to integrity, doing the right thing in face of obstacles, right? Facing threats to personally meaningful aspects of our work. This bucket is extremely important. Now moving on to financial wellness is a term used to describe a person's relationship with and ability to manage financial matters. It involves a process of learning to effectively manage our money, understanding the way money impacts other areas of our life. And for first responders, we did not get in this business to be rich by any means. However, with what's going on in 2024, 2023, 2022, is we are at all-time lows for staffing. So what does that do? It creates many opportunities for endless overtime. And so one of the things that many of us fall into is we work hard. We work in a field that's very challenging, difficult. We are giving service every single day. And so sometimes we might want to buy things for ourselves or our family. I want to buy the camper. I want the boat. I want the cabin, right? I want to take exotic vacations to just have a time out. But if we don't manage our money in order to take care of those things, then that can hurt all the other elements of our wellness, right? If I overspend and I'm in debt, I feel shame, which then impacts my spiritual wellness or my intellectual or my emotional, right? So they all tie together. And so I will never forget my first day on the job, 23 years old. And one of the elder officers told me, Rachel, you better get your ass into 401k, do it right away, deferred comp. And I did. And I didn't even know better. I'm 23, right? And so I chose to take the wisdom of somebody like that. And I encourage others to do the same, because pay yourself first, right? Pay yourself first for your future. And, Bill Ramsey, there's all kinds of David Ramsey, there's all kinds of ways out there to manage this. Most departments have a city of some sort where you have a deferred comp or you have someone to aid. Why not use the resource, right? We have financial planners all over the place, many that specialize in para and first responders who understand our financial and retirement systems. So pursuing this type of wellness can not only influence one's ability to provide for their family, but also the impact of good and bad financial health, which will affect our emotional well-being, right? Like I said, and just that mental strain of all the things that, if I'm not managing my finances, can lead us to high blood pressure, anxiety, depression. Again, it seems like a silly one of the wellness wheel, but it's so important. It's equally important. Money doesn't buy us happiness, but it definitely buys me the car that I drive. It pays for the house I live in. It is helping me provide for my family, for my loved ones. And, we have to work hard and manage that. And what often falls into the trap for many people is when they get access to all that overtime, they get used to a standard of living, right? And so when you buy that boat and you buy that camper and the cabin and the trip to France, my big question for many people is I will often hear them say, I don't have time to use any of these things because I'm working overtime or I'm working extra hours to pay for the things. And so that's kind of one of the things to look for when you're very young. And I don't know a lot of 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds that are making probably 80K in particular first responder jobs, or 60 or 70 that I couldn't have dreamed of 28 years ago. And so they are getting paid much earlier in life, and that can be good, or it can be an opportunity for overspending or impulsive buying. And we want to keep ourselves in this financial wheel of financial wellness. And so it's critical in this field. When overtime is for us unlimited and individuals fall into that trap, we got to watch out for that, right? We can't take things with us, right? You have to identify what's the most important part in your life. So how do we improve financial wellness? Understanding your status financially. Can you afford everyday living expenses? Do you have money set aside for unexpected things and emergencies, right? I have a savings account. Just don't touch it, right? Monitor and tracking your spending, having a budget, using online banking for daily balances. So every single day, what's your balance? What's going on? What's going in, what's going out? And just being able to visualize yourself and your money in the future. So if you need to make changes of any kind to improve your financial wellness, you can do that at the flip of your phone. Setting goals. Don't let this part scare you. Setting goals does not have to be a major task. Think about what you want for yourself and for your family. Does that mean you can't go buy a new car or a camper? Absolutely. My camper purchase is part of my wellness. That is where I'm able to disconnect, check out, leave my phone. It's the most connected I'm ever with my spouse, because there is no stressors anywhere else other than our only objective is to be together, be present, be in nature, be with our animals, be on the water, ride, run, bike, walk. It flips every bucket that we need. And so it's not wrong to want to have goals of things to buy and purchase. Making short-term and long-term goals. This is extremely important to have those small little victories, right? Dave Ramsey would encourage you to do the snowball, pay off something little to build up to the bigger thing. And so putting your plan into action. And then once you've decided what you want to achieve regarding your financial health, making some sort of effort daily, reading a book, attend a financial freedom seminar, things like this, have a trusted banker or financial advisor. Just having someone that also helps hold you accountable. Because sometimes this is one of the biggest stressors in relationships is financial wellness and things that couples fight about. Well, you bought this and you bought that, and the Amazon man comes here, and Scheels keeps coming this day, and Amazon and it can be a huge source of relational stressors. And so having an open dialogue about how we're spending my money and what our goals are as a couple, as a family, saving for college for your children, if that's your goal, of just being really open and honest about it to keep your financial wellness intact. The last one of the 8 dimensions of wellness is going to be environmental wellness. And this might seem a little cliche, but this wellness relates to your personal relationship with your surroundings and the way in which that relationship affects your overall wellness. So it involves not only your physical surroundings, but also the feelings of being well cared for, of being part of a safe community where you live. Additionally, it includes having an understanding of awareness of potential risk associated with the environment or your personal space, right? I choose to live in Minnesota because for the most part, I don't have hurricanes here. I don't have to worry about tropical storms, but I could have a tornado. I could have a severe hailstorm. And so I'm very aware of my personal space where I live and where I choose to spend my time. And just this awareness and harmony is at the root of our financial wellness of it's focusing on promoting that healthy environment. You know, what does your office space look like? If your office is your squad car, is it disorganized? Is it full of crap? Can you find things if you need it in a hurry? You know, is your paramedic bag, is your firefighter bag, is your SWAT bag ready? Is your see-through corrections bag full of things that you have to have ready in case you get held over for 16 hours or longer? Do I have food? Do I have preparation? Right? So all those things that we put into our environment are equally, not one of them is more important than the other. And so just really having a mindfulness in terms of what do we want to have around our environment to keep us safe, feel us nurtured, feel in connection to others, and what do I need to have in my environment to feel safe, right? For me, it's gardening, it's getting outside. I love having a beautiful yard. I love embracing gardening and flowers because it just gives me a sense of peace, right? It's like going to the Arboretum or other places outside of like, where do you want to go in your environment that you feel whole and you can see the beauty and add to that positivity of your wellness. Ways to improve this, obviously promoting this type of wellness in terms of your environment, just simple habits into your life. Buying fresh food at a farmer's market, recycle to decrease landfill, using solar water or solar energy if you can, conserving energy by turning, just the simple things, turning lights off when you don't need to have them on. Close your refrigerator. My spouse always gets on me if I don't shut the refrigerator too slow. And turn your air conditioner off, turn your windows on, get some energy, get some open air into your house. And so just kind of working on those kinds of things in terms of the cycle of wellness and how it impacts every single dimension. And challenging our environmental wellness can assist us in increasing our connection to the rest of the world so that we can make just some small differences and can give a sense of pride that we are doing our own part. So one assignment to kind of wrap up this section of wellness is on the next slide. I'm going to have you give yourself a score on each dimension of wellness as it's described at the bottom of the page. So please, at the end of this assignment, I want you to add up your scores for each dimension, and then I want you to bring them to class. So this is not your quiz that you need to take for this section of the training, but it is something I would like you to bring back for class. And so what the assignment is, it's a little maybe small for you, and I'll have another handout in person, but it's kind of a wellness wheel worksheet. And so it has all the 8 dimensions on the wheel, and then it has a number. Number 1 in the center means, I own this weakness. I know I definitely need to work on it, but hello, let's get going. Number 2, I'm okay. I'm at this area. That's great in my life. I know that I can do better. Giving yourself a 3, it's part of my life. I'm pretty solid, but I'm sure there's something I can do to improve. 4 would be, I'm pretty satisfied with this area dimension. There's probably more I can do, but I'm not sure I have the time and energy. And then 5, I am completely satisfied with my area of wellness in this particular category. I'm going to give myself a 5. And so obviously 1 would be the worst. Going out the circle to 5 is you do the best. And so I want you to give yourself a score for each area of dimension and add those numbers up, right? So it could be as high as 40 and bring that number in each of the categories to class. And we're going to kind of just have us look at it and look into a deeper dive of that. Does that make sense? If you have any questions, we will all answer them when we meet together in the next few days.
Okay, everybody, we're in the home stretch. This concludes the portion of the training covering the 8 dimensions of wellness. Please click on the next section, which will be the last portion of the training covering the introduction to psychological first aid.